Greetings, mighty eagles! First and foremost, I hope you and your family are doing fine amidst this pandemic. By the way, I am teacher Emerson Louis M. Lara, and I will be your teacher in understanding culture, society, and politics. And I would like to formally welcome you to this subject where I share with you all my lessons for the first semester of academic year 2020-2021. So without further ado, let's get started.
Our next lesson to discuss is the role of culture to human. But before we go to our formal discussion, let us define again what is a culture is. Culture is the lifeblood of society, wherein it includes our customs, social institutions, traditions, values, and possession acquired by a group of people in the course of generation through an individual and group striving. Now, here in our next lesson, we will going to discuss the individual and social benefit of culture, the cultural relativism, and ethnocentrism. First here is the individual and social benefit of culture. So when we say benefit of culture, it is the importance of culture to a certain individual or a group. And these are the following individual and social benefit of culture. First is the intrinsic benefit. So when we say intrinsic benefit, participating in culture can benefit individuals in many different ways, some of which are deeply personal. Means it is how the certain individual learn or being benefited to other culture. So dito na pumapasok yung tinatawag nating culture is learned and culture is being shared. Next is improve learning and valuable skills for the future. Means participation in culture helps develop thinking skills, builds self-esteem, and improves resilience, all of which enhance education outcomes. For example, students from low-income families who take part in arts activities at school are 3 times more likely to get a degree than those who do not. And third is the better health and well-being. Participation in culture contributes to healthy population in several ways, wherein by creativity and cultural engagement have been shown to improve both mental and physical health. So culture is being integrated into health care. And lastly, vibrant communities. Culture helps build social capital, the glue that holds communities together by bringing people together. Cultural activities such as festival, fairs, or classes create social solidarity and cohesion, fostering social inclusion, community empowerment, and capacity building, and enhancing confidence, civic pride, and tolerance. The social capital created through culture increases with regular participation in cultural activities. Cultural engagement also plays a key role in poverty reduction and communities at risk strategies. So culture is important to vitality of all communities. So these are the importance of culture, or these are the individual and social benefit of culture to human. Now, we go to the highlights of this lesson, the cultural relativism and ethnocentrism. But before we go on, what is the difference between cultural relativism and ethnocentrism? As we proceed, let us analyze first these pictures. In America, eye contact suggests that you are paying attention and interest in what a person has to say. Yet, in other cultures, eye contact can be considered rude and a challenge of authority. Next, in Bolivia, 14-year-old girls can legally get married, But in China, men have to wait until they are 22. Wherein these pictures is an example of cultural relativism. But what is a cultural relativism? Cultural relativism is the ability to understand a culture on its own terms and not to make judgment using the standards of one's own culture. In other words, it is the view that all beliefs, customs, and ethics are relative to the individual within his own social context. Means right and wrong are cultural specific. Kumbaga, walang tama at mali. Maaring tama sa aking kultura at maaring mali sa iyong kultura. Pwede namang maaring mali sa aking kultura at pwede namang tama sa iyong kultura. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng cultural relativism, na kung saan ang pagiging tama at mali ay nakadepende sa kultura na kinagisnan mo. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng cultural relativism. And these are the goal of cultural relativism. The goal of this is to promote understanding of cultural practices that are not typically part of one's own culture. Using the perspective of cultural relativism leads to the view that no one culture is superior than other culture when compared to system of morality, law, politics. So sinabi ko kanina, walang tama at mali, pero depende sa kulturang kinagisnan mo. Yun ang goal ng cultural relativism. Ang cultural relativism, there are two categories of cultural relativism. First is the absolute and second is the critical. So when we say absolute, everything that happens within a culture must and should not be questioned by outsider. So ibig sabihin, walang sino mang pwedeng ibang kultura ang pwedeng magdikta or magtanong sa'yo kung bakit ganyan ang suot mo, bakit ganyan ang ginagawa ninyo, bakit ganyan ang paniniwala ninyo, kasi nga kultura nyo yan. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng absolute. So when we say naman ng critical, creates question about cultural practices in terms of who is accepting them and why. Critical cultural relativism also recognizes power relationship, and that is the two categories of cultural relativism. Next here is what is ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism, it is the term anthropologists use to describe the opinion that one's own way of life is natural or correct. Some would simply call it cultural ignorance, wherein it is a quite different than that of cultural relativism, wherein it is the view that one particular ethnic group is somehow superior to all other group. So, ibig sabihin, pag sinabi natin ethnocentrism, kumbaga, sila lang yung superior. Ethnic, sentro, or centrism, sentro. Kumbaga, sa kanilang kultura lang or sa kanilang ethnicity lang nakasentro ang kanilang paniniwala. So, ibig sabihin, superior. Naniniwala sila na mas superior yung kanilang kultura sa ibang kultura. So, yun yung ibig sabihin ng ethnocentrism. So, these are the three stages of ethnocentrism. First is the denial, second is defense, and third is the minimization. So, when you say denial stage, do not recognize the existence of cultural differences. They are completely ethnocentric in that they believe there is a correct type of living and that those who behave different simply don't know any better. Meaning to say, kumbaga hindi sila naniniwala na may iba't ibang kultura. Kasi nga more on ethnocentric sila. Dahil nga sa paniniwala nila na sila yung mas superior. The next is defense. The defense stage are no longer blissfully ignorant of others' cultures. They recognize the existence of other culture but not their validity. They are feel threatened by the presence of other way of thinking and thus denigrate them in an effort to assert the superiority of their own culture. Ibig sabihin, ito naman is recognize na nila yung existence ng other culture but they are not validity. Kumbaga hindi nila ito pinapansin. Kasi nga sinabi ko kanina, ang ethnocentrism is more on cultural centered. Kumbaga nakasentro lang sila sa kanilang kultura. Kaya nga tinawag na ethnocentrism. Wala silang ibang pinaniniwalaan kundi yung sarili nilang kultura kasi nga sinasabi lang mas superior yung kanilang kultura. And the next is minimization. The minimization stage of ethnocentrism are still threatened by cultural differences and try to minimize them by telling themselves that people are more similar than dissimilar. No longer do they see those from other cultures as being misguided, inferior, or unfortunate. So these are the three stages of ethnocentrism. Now, what is the difference of cultural relativism and ethnocentrism? So, ethnocentrism is judging other cultures based on the preconception originating in the standards and custom of one's own culture, while cultural relativism is the notion that culture should be understood on its own terms, not using a standard of other culture. So, kung nakita natin pagkakaiba pa lang nila, cultural relativism is walang tama at walang mali. Ethnocentrism, sinasabing yung kanilang kultura lamang ang tama at yung iba ay mali. And then involves looking at other culture from the perspective of one's own culture, involves looking, while in cultural relativism involves looking at other culture by its own perspective instead of one's own culture. So these are the difference between ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. So I hope you understand what is the difference of cultural relativism and ethnocentrism. And that is the end of my slide or my presentation.
So that is the end of our discussion for today. I hope you have learned something and be safe. Wear your face mask and face shield. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you and God bless.